Well, welcome to everyone who's joined us at today's debate and on Facebook Live. I'm Jackie True, the Director of Monash University's Gender, Peace and Security Centre, and I'll be chairing today's debate. Before I go further, since we're streaming from Australia, I'd like to acknowledge the country on which we speak by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land. Here, at least at Monash University, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and their elders, past, present and future. I'd like to welcome you to this Afghan Australian Youth Debate, our sixth debate in the Toward Inclusive Peace series, which is a global debate series focused on women, youth, human rights and gender equality in peace and security. And in this debate series, the Afghans for Progressive Thinking and the Monash International Affairs Society, together with Monash Gender, Peace and Security Centre, have been following the intra-Afghan peace talks, aiming to highlight key issues of equal participation and also to the cause of inclusive peace in Afghanistan. Today's debate is related, but a bit of a departure, focused on the UN Women, Peace and Security Agenda, which celebrates 20 years this week, and that is 20 years of addressing the gendered impacts of armed conflict and the importance of gender equality and women's participation in peace and security. So it's a real pleasure that the two teams from Afghanistan and Australia are going to take on this question today. I'll just briefly introduce Monash Gender, Peace and Security, and then I'd like to turn to my colleagues at APT and Monash International Affairs Society. So just a few words about Monash Gender, Peace and Security Centre. We're a research centre dedicated to building globally recognised and gender inclusive research evidence to deliver peace and security in our region and globally. And as well, using this research, we teach the Graduate Certificate of Gender, Peace and Security online and in person to domestic and international students. And with the Graduate Certificate, we aimed to enable leaders to better integrate gender perspectives into peace and security policy making at all levels. I'd now like to introduce my colleague, Behezda Razik from Afghans for Progressive Thinking to make a brief statement on behalf of APT.
Thank you, Jackie. Greetings, everybody. Greetings to all the debaters. It's an honor to have you all here with us in this debate. Do you have my voice clear? Okay. To give a brief introduction about Afghans for Progressive Thinking, or APT, I must say that it's the largest youth-led professional organization that has members in 34 provinces of Afghanistan. It works to promote youth leadership, education, and a culture of peace. Since its inception in 2010, APT's activities have impacted and inspired over 40,000 youth and children to build a vision for a just and inclusive society. Moreover, it works as a peace builder and to contribute in positive changes to the community. Currently, APT runs 35 debate clubs in 35 public and private universities in Afghanistan. In 2018, APT established an elementary school for internally displaced kids or children in Mazar-e-Sharif. The school provides scholarship for 80 children, of which 50 are female, to study at the school. As a member of the Organization of UNOY Peace Builders, APT has lobbied for UN Security Resolution 2250 on youth, peace and security at the United Nations headquarters in New York City. And as a follow-up to this resolution, APT has initiated the annual Youth Representative Program to the United Nations. And in 2018 and 2019, respectively, APT has selected the first and second Afghan Youth Representative, and in 2020, the third Afghan Youth Representative to the United Nations Program. Last year, APT organized the National Youth Jirga that brought 100 youth representatives from 34 provinces of Afghanistan to discuss the Afghan peace process and youth's role in this process. So as the outcome of this Jirga, the youth drafted a resolution that focused on the role of young people on shaping the future of the country. And this resolution was shared with the Afghan government and the international community. APT's long-term goal is to take its message to 34 provinces of Afghanistan by 2030. Thank you very much, everybody, and I wish you all best of luck for the round of the debate.
Thank you very much, Behezda. I'd now like to ask Ryan Attard if he'd like to introduce Monash International Affairs Society.
There we go. Good afternoon, Jackie. Good afternoon, debaters in Australia. Good morning to our debaters in Afghanistan. My name is Ryan Attard and I'm the president of the Monash International Affairs Society. We are the largest international relations student-led organisation in the country with a mantra to inspire future world leaders. We recently held our own annual conference in which students got together to discuss and find resolutions to key important issues. And that's what our goal is, to facilitate discussion and to help students from around the world build connections so that as one, they can come up with key ideas. This debate series has been great to see now in its sixth round. And it is impressive to see the ideas that have been raised by the debaters from both Afghanistan and Australia. So on behalf of the Monash International Affairs Society, I wish you all luck in this debate, and I look forward to seeing your responses to the debate question.
Thanks very much, Ryan. It's great to hear that the Monash International Affairs Society is now bigger than the La Trobe one, which for many years had that acclaim. I'd now like to, and it is my great pleasure to introduce our adjudicator for today's debate, Ms. Amy Haddad. And it's a real pleasure to have you with us here today, Amy, and I'm sure you're going to give great insights and great feedback to the debaters here. Just a little bit about Amy. Amy has over 20 years experience working on gender equality from the grassroots to the government, and over 14 years working on gender equality in development and foreign policy. She's currently Director of the Gender Equality, Disability and Social Inclusion Practice at Kofi International Development. And Amy has this year been as a part of a group that's established Snap Forward Feminist Policy Network, which is advocating for gender responsive COVID recovery in Australia. Prior to this year, Amy was the Principal Gender Equality Specialist for Australia's Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade since 2017. And in that role, she provided policy leadership on gender equality and women, peace and security for Australia's bilateral and multilateral foreign policy and engagement. Amy has represented Australia at multiple fora, including the UN Commission on the Status of Women, before the Committee on the Convention to End All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and on the UN Women, Peace and Security Focal Point Network. Amy was posted to the UN in New York from 2014 to 2017, leading on development, human rights and humanitarian response, as well as being Australia's gender equality lead on the range of negotiations leading, including the Sustainable Development Goals. Again, thanks so much for joining us today, Amy. You're really a perfect adjudicator for today's debate. I'd now like to introduce the statement that the two teams are going to debate today, and it is that, and I quote, 20 years of the Women, Peace and Security Agenda established by UN Security Council Resolution 1325 has transformed ideas and practices of international peace and security. And now I would like to introduce the two teams that will be debating this topic. The Afghan team, the APT team will be taking the affirmative or the government side, and the Monash team will be taking the opposition or the negative side. So on the APT affirmative side, we have opening Jamshid Mohammadi, and then Baheshta Ahmadi. And closing for the government, we have Saifullah Atahi, and then Zara Karimi. For the Monash University team on the negative or the opposition side, we have opening Nicole James, then Melinthi Malawa, and closing for the opposition, Salman Yusufi and Charlotte Jones. Each speaker will have 5 minutes, and we have our Ryan will be the timekeeper, and so we will be muting you at the 5-minute point. We will give a warning in the chat at 1 minute to go. I'd now like to open the debate and wish all the best to all speakers, and ask Jamshid Mohammadi if he would take the floor.
Dear Madam Speaker, in Colombian peace process, there was a zero participation of women in process until civil society and the United Nations, using UN Security Council 1325 resolution, pressured both sides to include women in political settlement. Also in Rwanda, the United Nations used UN Security Council 1325 resolution to ensure that women's rights are protected and gender equality is added into process and the process of negotiating a political settlement. Not only feminist scholars, but scholars on peace and security resolution in conflict resolution widely argue that inclusion of women plays a significantly vital role in sustainability and all inclusiveness of the peace processes. With that being said, I as a Prime Minister in the affirmative side am here to propound today's debate, which is, I am quoting, 20 years of women, peace and security agenda established by the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 has transformed the ideas and practices of international peace and security. To set up the debate, Madam Speaker, for today, I as a Prime Minister see a clear need of defining some of the key phrases in this debate in the context of this particular resolution. Madam Speaker, please note, in the opposition side, please note that there has been no use of dictionary whatsoever in defining these terms and these phrases. We define them rather in the context of this particular agenda. So with that being said, by transformed ideas and practices, we mean that this agenda has helped and will help enhance the role of women in peace processes, conflict prevention, and also post-peace conflict reconstruction. Madam Speaker, conflict is an inevitable phenomenon, and we understand that in the era of the modern states, now the modern conflict is very difficult to resolve through military means, and therefore we think that political settlements are always needed. So with that being said, in this agenda, by international peace and security, we mean a peace that is worldwide and also a world that cooperates with each other in achieving a positive peace. The government side, Madam Speaker, will take the burden of proving that this agenda has and will have address the disproportionate and unique impact of conflict on women, recognize their unvalued role in conflict prevention and post-conflict settlements, and also stress the importance of women in political negotiations, using times and again Afghanistan as one of the primary case studies because of the fact that we now see there's an ongoing attempt to end the Afghan conflict through a political settlement. Madam Speaker, the government side has no doubt on two things, very important things. Now, the first thing is that in addition to increasing the role of women in the peace processes, this agenda has helped carve pathways towards egalitarian life, gender equality, protection of women's rights, positive peace, and inclusive peace. Secondly, we believe that this agenda has helped and will help bring international security because of the fact that once a political settlement is done and is achieved in the conflict zones, the world can rest assured that these soils will not be used against them. We in the government side believe that, Madam Speaker, the trade-off of this debate is very easy to calculate because of the fact that this debate, we believe, promotes peace, security, and egalitarian life. Whereas in return, Madam Speaker, please note that we believe we lose nothing in return. Opposing this agenda would clearly mean that the opposition side is against peace, security, and egalitarian life. If the opposition side believes that we will lose anything in return of implementing this particular agenda, I want the leader of opposition to please remind us what that thing is. Lastly, I want to make an argument in support of this debate in the context of Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, we have had more than 3 to 4 peace agreements throughout between the warring parties in 1996 to 2001. All those peace agreements, Madam Speaker, miserably failed due to many reasons, but primarily because of the fact that they were not inclusive. There was a zero participation of women in those peace processes. With that being said, the United Nations in UN can use this agenda to ensure that the post-peace settlement is an inclusive settlement, because the Taliban, as the primary challenger of the state in Afghanistan, have stressed on the fact that they want the U.S. troops to leave, but not their assistance. So they accept that they will require and accept the aids from the United States. So the United States can provide Afghanistan a conditional aid in return if the post-peace settlement recognize some of the values and principles of this resolution. With that being said, Madam Speaker, I am proud to propose.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. I now turn to the Leader of the Opposition, and that is Nicole James. Please take the floor.
Thank you. And thank you to the Prime Minister for outlining their party's position on this topic. They brought some very interesting points. We in the opposition have some concerns with the true impact of Resolution 1325 and the Women, Peace and Security agenda in the 20 years since its inception. We contend that 1325 misses the mark when it comes to gendered perceptions, women in leadership and accountability. We therefore present a new model moving forward which will truly allow for the transformation of the system. I would like to first note a couple of points that the Prime Minister has stated that I draw exception to. I would like to first draw attention to the topic we are all discussing this evening, and particularly the word transformed. I find it interesting that the Prime Minister has stated that they won't be using a dictionary definition of transformed, but have made their own, stating that it will mould the situation. Are we moulding words to our own specifications and needs now? Because we're of course arguing that 1325 transformed the ideas and practices of international peace and security. To use a definition from a dictionary, the Cambridge Dictionary defines transform to change completely the appearance or character of something or someone. This is extremely important. Changed completely. This does not mean improve a little bit, move in the right direction, or even modify in a positive manner. We are discussing here the complete change of the ideas and practice of international peace and security. No one is arguing here that there hasn't been a move into the right direction or any positive change at all. Of course not. However, what we are arguing is that although 1325 definitely brought some positive change in the 20 years since it has taken effect, there has not been enough positive change to warrant the title of transformative resolution. Again, I don't really accept the made-up definition of the Prime Minister. I think that definitions are important when measuring change. We'll be arguing about real change and real impacts on all women. The 8 subsequent resolutions after 1325 was put into place, which regard gender, peace and security, are evidence enough that 1325 was ineffective. 5 of these 8 new resolutions focused on sexual violence at the expense of a truly gendered approach. Sexual violence is on the increase, both inside and outside of conflict situations, and women are the primary victims of this. Using the DRC as an example, regardless of the multiple anti-sexual violence campaigns facilitated by the UN and state-run initiatives in the DRC, it has failed to reduce sexual violence in a significant way. How can this be evidence of transformation? Aspirational language, a blanket approach, and lack of accountability isn't enough. Afghanistan was brought up as an example, and yes, although there has been positive change, we want to focus on what the actual impact the Afghanistani women experience. There have been many peace agreements, but they've failed due to lack of inclusivity, and there has been a lack of participation of women in peace processes. I will now introduce the other members of my party and how they will further arguing this point. Firstly, the Deputy Leader of our party, Malinthi, will first discuss the failure of the resolution to achieve the gendered approach envisaged when creating 1325 by discussing the lack of real implementation of gender provisions, especially those which aren't tokenistic. She will then explain how sexual violence faced by women has not been adequately addressed and the subsequent peace agreements have actually further victimised women. Our Deputy Leader will finish her speech by discussing a more robust approach which should be implemented. Secondly, Salman will speak on women in leadership within the peace process and how measures can be better implemented for greater accountability. Salman will also note that it is not only adding women into leadership roles which should be aimed for, it is civil society itself which needs to be transformed. Salman will close with our suggested plan for tangible change in civil society and women in leadership. Lastly, Charlotte will provide a summary of our critiques of Resolution 1325 and the new model we suggest to support it into transforming the ideas, practices and practices of international peace and security going into the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicole. I'd now like to turn to the next speaker from the government side, Beheshta Ahmadi. Please go ahead, Beheshta.
Thank you, dear judges. I'd like to start my speech by rebutting the opposition leader, and then I'll go to my own arguments. I'd like to remind the leader of opposition that the word transform actually is to make a major change. It's to make a marked change that is visible. It's not a complete flip. And this the definition is from Oxford language. Yes, we did define our own words because we needed to, so that it could be in line with this context that we are talking about. And if we are talking about change, we need to start from change. Now I'd like to go to my own arguments. Dear judges, the standards of protection for women affected by conflict are glaring in their inadequacy, as is the international response. Only by ending impunity of crimes against women in war can nations be rebuilt. Gender equality means enabling women as full citizens, as voters, as candidates, and as decision makers. It means supporting women's centrality to reconstruction, to reforming the constitution, the electoral system, and the policies, and resources that support development. Without women's representation, which is half of the population, no country can truly claim to be engaged in democratic development and participatory governance. Now, my first argument. Gender-aware perspectives offered by the WPS agenda enhance the ways in which we understand the causes of violence and how solutions are developed to address them. Women's agency, voice, and capacities, as well as real gender perspective, are critical to local dialogues, better policies, and more equitable peace deals. Research has shown that peace agreements that include women are more likely to be durable and seen as legitimate. Women are often credited with bringing about peace agreements and ensuring negotiations continue independent of specific agenda points. For instance, an International Peace Institute study of 182 signed peace agreements between 1989 and 2011 found that when women are included in peace processes, there is a 35% chance that the probability increases in a peace agreement that will last for more than 15 years. My second argument, greater representation of women is vital to enhancing diversity, which in turn improves the effectiveness of peace processes. Women have the capacity for both violence and peace. Women have been victims of conflict and can be agents of peace building. Women's involvement in peace building is as old as their experience with violence. There is this common misconception that which stems from associating women with softer character attributes, such as peacefulness and naivety, which leads people into thinking that women cannot handle fierce roles, such as peace building. Their gender identities allow them to peace building that man cannot do. In addition, it is advantageous to draw on skills, assets, and capacities that are available to women in oppressive patriarchal systems and harness those for productive use in peace building. Violence against, let's take the example of Afghanistan. Violence against Afghan women in oppressed is one of the most serious human rights issues right now. Nearly 65,000 cases were reported in 2019, and it's still increasing. For Afghan women, violence starts from their own homes, yet they work and root for peace. To give you an example, WAW, which is a civil society organization dedicated to help Afghan women and girls exercise their rights to pursue their representation in all areas of life, be it political, social, culture, and economic. Since WAW has Since then, they have trained 3,056 Afghan women as mediators, negotiators, and amplifiers, and over 22,000 women and men have participated in dialogues where they have shared their hopes for peace. This, I think, creates awareness and shows that more women and men want peace. They get an insight on each other's ideas and what they want and need, and they can work together to bring about peace. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much, Beheshta. I now turn to the opposition, and this next speaker is Melintha Milawa. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to refer back in beginning my speech to what was said by the opposition leader, in that the definition of transformation is something that is objective. It looks at a situation and where we can be in the future. It is not something that is subjective and something that we can take to mean what we want. Therefore, before beginning my speech, I would like to address some of the points made by the government. They mentioned how the softer character of women is often something that is mistaken and something that lends them well sort of to peace building. However, as I will demonstrate in my speech, this is actually one of the failures of the resolution that we are debating today, in that it has created this illusion, and that is something that has actually been used against women. Additionally, yes, there has been progress made in Afghanistan in making sure that there are female mediators, but having a tokenistic view on this issue is not going to allow a transformation. In my speech, I will be using a two-prong approach. Firstly, I will demonstrate how the resolution has not mainstreamed a gendered perspective. Secondly, it has not tackled sexual violence appropriately. First of all, the resolution has failed in creating an emphasis on having a gendered component in resolutions. Research by Liu and True shows that the inclusion of strong gender provisions in resolutions is an unusual event rather than the norm. 43% of peace agreements in their sample did not contain gender provisions at all, and only 16.4% contain strong gender provisions. This is despite the resolution advocating for a gendered approach. This statistic, coupled with the fact that the research shows that the strong gender provisions aren't even on the rise, demonstrates that this resolution has not been able to mainstream a gender perspective. Secondly, the resolution has also failed to address sexual violence faced by women in an adequate way. Sexual violence has long been used as a tool of impunity to degrade and intimidate, and it has even been recognized as a tool of genocide. Therefore, it is rightfully mentioned in this resolution. However, that does not mean that it has translated into meaningful action. For instance, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, despite there being missions and protection teams, the sexual violence faced by women has been worse than that of Rwanda, which was before this resolution was passed. Therefore, any claim that there has been a transformation in this arena is simply not held up. In fact, there was, in 1 year, 400,000 rapes reported in the Congo. In addition to failing to limit sexual violence, the resolution has also had the effect of furthering negative stereotypes. It emphasizes that women are, as I said before, peacemaking individuals, and that their opinion as peacekeepers is only important because they can provide the opinion of the victim. This simply reduces women to being the victims and to requiring the protection of men, rather than actually focusing on creating real change. In fact, in 8 subsequent UNSC resolutions, 5 of them have focused on women as victims of sexual conflict. The resolution itself aims to go beyond this. It mentions the Beijing Declaration, which seeks to empower women. However, pigeonholing women using terminology that simply reinforces stereotypes is not the method to deal with sexual violence. This is where civil society needs to step in. For instance, the Afghan Women's Network submitted its first report to CEDAW in 2013, demonstrating that women can participate as active members to tackle these issues as leaders, not as victims. However, their efforts were marred, largely by politically powerful conservatives. Therefore, to truly empower civil society, this resolution needs to make sure that it can encourage a more robust approach. For instance, the 2016 Colombian Peace Agreement involves the creation of a gender subcommittee, among many other positive contributions, and this can ensure that the situation is monitored and that there is an implementation of a mainstream gender focus. Such agreements will allow for tangible change rather than merely relying on band-aid fixes that will in the end not lead to transformation. And in finishing my speech, I would like to reaffirm the definition we have chosen of transformation, which is that it is tangible change and not simply a slight fix. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melinthi. I now turn to the third speaker from the government side, Saifullah Atahi. Thank you very much.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Madam Speaker, first, let me draw your attention to a very important point. First of all, transformation. What is transformation? It's time-consuming. It takes decades to change things that have been going wrong for a lot of time. For decades, things have been wrong. Now, when we want to change it, when we want to transform, so we need a lot of time. And it's not okay to question a lot of other points of a resolution just in 2 decades. So, nextly, as the opposition leader said that they want to propose their model, I would like to ask them to propose their model now, not at the end of the debate. Besides, there have been a lot of countries that, for example, only 57 states, I think, that have taken national action plans to implement the resolution 1325. So still we accept there are problems. There are still violence against women. There are still inclusions, but changes are coming. A lot of major changes have come, and now there are more changes coming. Changes are going on. So we say that it's going well. Let me come to my arguments. This resolution has resulted in more inclusive governance in conflicted countries. For example, in 2007 to 2019, in the Ethiopia, almost 47.6% of the cabinet of the government servants were women. And in South Africa, it's the same for the Rwanda, for the Tunisia, and even it comes to Afghanistan, 10%. There were 10% decrease in civil service recruitment of women in 2015 after the Afghanistan set up the national action plan to implement this resolution. Besides, the 26% of the parliament of Afghanistan are women, and the 30% of the upper house, they're women. So it started to change when the resolution was taken serious in Afghanistan. So they are results of the resolution. And it's the same in Iraq, like 25.5% in 2018. There were female in the cabinet of the government. Besides, the Afghanistan National Action Plan has prioritized the political participation of women in all decision-making levels, such as the decision-making and executive levels of civil service, leadership positions on security agencies, strategy and policy development, and besides strengthening women's active participation in elections. Today in Afghanistan, women can be voters, candidates, and campaigners. So as a result of these national action plans, which is the result of the first resolution, the resolution 1325, and according to the UNAMA reports by UNAMA in 2019, there has been an increase in numbers of women as candidates, campaigners, and voters as a result of promoting enlightenment on women's active political participation. And besides, through decisions by the Independent Administrative Reform and Civil Service Commission, there have been a 10% increase of female employees in civil service through code of actions. These actions were taken when the resolution 1325 was taken serious in Afghanistan. The results of how it has transformed conflicted countries. And besides, the increased participation of women in ministries as deputies and officers as officers are also known. Therefore, more participation and inclusiveness is equal to less conflict and more peaceful situation. Besides this, as a result of these resolutions, women are more prioritized in peace-building operations. Although there are still threats of violence and discrimination against women in different countries, there are more support for women as negotiators in peace missions. For example, in Afghanistan, 20% of the negotiating team are women. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Saifullah. I now turn to the third speaker for the government side, the opposition side, Salman Yousufi. Thank you.
20 years since its creation, the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 has transformed ideas and practices of international peace and security. It has brought about positive changes such as the member of the government stated previously. We are not entirely denying that. However, we would have loved to see some decency from the government side to be a bit more realistic. The disappointment around the resolution comes from the government side's broad interpretation of its huge transformative potential. Our criticism is solely based on its normative framework of the resolution in action in the states. As such, I'd like to raise two key points in addressing this argument. But first, a couple of points. The member of the government talked about transformation and inclusivity. However, what they failed to mention was that what's being done are either counterproductive or at least not helpful. For example, according to the University of Edinburgh Peace Agreement Database, only 11% of peace agreements signed in 2018 had a reference to women, girls, and gender. Furthermore, in the 32 years period between 1957 and 1989, a mere 20 women served as uniformed peacekeepers. I'm sure the member of the government would like to rebut that, but well, that's 30 to 40 years ago. Well, let me provide you with a recent example. The most recent UN data indicates that women occupy 22% of the 16,500 civilian positions associated with peacekeeping missions. To help address this, Mrs. Speaker, I would like to draw your attention on the apparent failure of the resolution to address the accountability mechanisms, monitoring measures, and disciplinary caution, not only from the member states, but from the senior members of the UN. I'd like to remind the government side, especially the member of the government, that comprehensive agreements are not legally binding. Although the soft law is still a binding resolution from the Security Council, without any punishment, evaluation of the progress or even a call for these to be created. It acts as little more than a strong message for governments to include a gender perspective in peace building. Moreover, its failure to deconstruct either international, national, or a local institution which are preventing the gender equality in the long run is evident in the cases of Yemen, Egypt, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. In addition, it fails to condemn conflict itself and does not include repercussions for those guilty of violence against women in war zones. Therefore, Resolution 1325 does not reach its full transformative potential simply because it neglects accountability mechanisms. Secondly, the resolution has failed to implement structural changes needed to allow women on a more progressive and transformative discourse. Instead of focusing on the emancipation of women in civil society, the resolution tends to reassert their victimhood in armed conflicts. Once again, I would like to reiterate that the whole purpose of the resolution was set to be a collaborative effort between NGOs, the UN, and civil society to make real changes. A change that made women and girls more inclusive rather than exclusive part of the civil society. Instead, the focus of the resolution 1325 is more of an add women and steer approach, where women are given a seat at the negotiation but are unable to determine their own place and contributions in a male-dominated incumbent society. Afghanistan, for example, I'm glad the Prime Minister mentioned it, has allocated a whopping 160 seats to women in the parliament. Despite the increased participation, Afghan women still remain the other rather than on the same side of the issue. Even during the Afghan peace talks with the Taliban, women filled only 5 seats from the 21 seats at the negotiation table. I guess it would not be insensible to say that the UN uses the resolution to justify their inaction in tackling structural issues, as despite poor results, they still don't believe the issues need to be dealt with. Mr. Speaker, the point is an agreement is only as effective if the policies are being holistically practiced. When the local and the international both take responsibility to own their flaws and create and find creative solutions to remedy these issues against women, peace, and security agenda, states need to adapt a stage-by-stage approach that is within the scope of their local, cultural, and operational context. This would help the Security Council to have a better picture of their progress and monitor states closely. Secondly, states need to establish clear, objective, focused national action plans that are focused on increasing transparency and coming up with a diverse set of solutions. This would include, for example, setting quotas for women in the parliament and practicing the emancipation of women and children in civil society.
Thank you very much. The closing speaker for the affirmative government side, Zara Karimi. Thank you very much.
I would like to summarize this debate by pointing out 2 important questions that has arrived or addressed by the arguments provided by the government side. The very first question that I'm going to talk about is that, is inclusivity necessary to ensure peace and security? And the second question is, and how has this resolution, the 1325 resolution, has brought changes and is it helpful to the war-torn countries or not? To answer my first question, is inclusivity necessary to ensure peace and security? According to the resolution of 1325, they are ensuring that the women and the equal participation of women and men in peace building and conflict resolutions, because of the fact that women are the very first victims of violence in war-torn countries, and that they contain the majority, or they make the majority of the population, and neglecting the rights of the majority of the people or population is not going to lead to a sustainable peace. And to come to the word transformation, the leader of opposition said that the transformation is not being defined according any definition other than the definition of dictionary is not acceptable. We are talking about a process. Transformation is a process that will take time, and by transforming the ideas, we do not mean that the moment that the resolution is passed, we should see the changes on the spot. It takes time. In a country like Afghanistan, it has taken 20 years, and we witness the changes, the positive changes that has been. As an example, we can see that nowadays women they're being given seats or quotas in the parliament, in higher and upper house, as well as they are being given the chance to participate, to participate and to be employed in governmental and non-governmental organizations, and this really their rights, and to understand that they have the value, and they have the right to that their rights and they have the right to be mentioned in every decision-making process. And the next one is, has inclusivity brought about positive changes? Of course, it has brought positive changes, and more changes are going to come. As an example, as the leader, as the member of opposition said that this resolution, the main point was that it should be a collaborative. It should be a collaborative act. Different countries they have to collaborate with each other. It's not just like the resolutions passed and nobody cares about that. They should make action plans, and Afghanistan has done action plans, and twice, and they are reporting the progress annually. Sorry. As one of the evidences of the positive changes, we can see the changes in the constitution of Afghanistan. For example, the Article 22, it prohibits the discrimination between genders, and it has ensured the gender equality between women and men inside Afghanistan. Other than that, we have Articles 43, 44, 53, and 54 that ensures the access of women to healthcare, education, and this changes has already come in Afghanistan, and it will, and more positive changes are on the way. And by transforming the ideas, and about the as the leader of opposition said that, as a deputy leader of opposition said that the resolution did not address the sexual violence against women completely. I have to say that there are being actions taken in this place. We have in Afghanistan constitution law, we have set punishments for those who have acts of sexual violence. We have created organizations for women who are the victims of sexual violence. We are giving them the right to raise their voice. One of the examples is the Women for Women organization, that they are working on capacity building of the men, and they're trying best to increase the capacity of people to know about the rights of women and men, and they should accept women in decision making. With all being said, I'm happy to be in the side of government. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I now invite the final speaker to close for the opposition negative side, Charlotte Jones. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the government for the discussion today. To begin, I would just like to reinstate that we as the opposition recognise that there have been positive changes to the ideas and practices of international peace and security as a result of UNSC Resolution 1325. However, these changes do not equate to a transformational shift in these ideas and practices. And that leads me on to the rebuttal to begin with, and I would just like to break it down into the two themes of this debate, which has really been discussing what transformation means and what our definitions of transformation are to look at this topic, and secondly, the theme of women's importance in the peace process and for there to be long-lasting peace, and where we both sit on the side of whether there has been transformation in that aspect or not. So firstly, in regards to transformation, there's been a lot of discussion about the idea from the government that initially that 1325 resolution has improved the ideas and practices surrounding international peace and security. However, we are not here today to discuss whether things will improve in the future or they won't improve. We are here today to discuss whether they have transformed or not. And we as the opposition believe that there have been these positive changes throughout time that we cannot deny, but there just hasn't been this overall transformational complete change that we would like to see in the peace security process, with not enough women at that peacemaking table. So in addition to this, we would just like to say that there has been some tangible changes, but it isn't enough. And we'd like to send everyone's attention to an alternative to what has been happening at the moment, to some effective agreements and declarations that can provide specific objectives and actions to create transformational change. So these are that Colombian Peace Agreement of 2016 and the Beijing Declaration. We see both of these as really quite specific declarations and agreements that have clear objectives and goals rather than tokenistic actions that often focus on women as victims. As we believe you need clear goals and implementation strategy and monitoring of those goals to ensure that we are pushing towards that transformational change we would like to see, but we don't believe we have seen yet. So further to this, we would just like to, now I'll just go on to discussing the enhancement of peace process and long-lasting peace and the importance of women at that table. So we agree, we are not against the fact that in order to have long-lasting peace, we do need women at the negotiation table. However, we believe that too often women are seen as peacekeepers who are there to provide the view of the victim rather than providing the view as another party, as the other side, the men and women as equal at the negotiation table. Rather, women are often there to provide that view of the victim rather than providing the view for all areas of peace and to create that long-lasting peace. As we've discussed, 5 of the 8 resolutions since 2000 focusing upon women and peace and security look at women as victims, and we believe that we do need to change this discussion and this rhetoric that is surrounding women in peace and security processes. The government stated that women are 50% of society, so they should have more of a say in the peacemaking process and decision making. And the fact is that the statistics stated by the government are those statistics that 20% of the negotiating team in Afghanistan are women. And we as the opposition believe that if the government does believe that 50% of society is women and they should be representative, how is 20% of society of women being at the negotiation table enough for them to be fully representative when their voices aren't heard as loudly or as clearly as the male? And we also believe that there is no use in a woman sitting at the table in a patriarchal structure where they're not able to bring that long-lasting peace because the structure isn't made for there to be that equality in views and values. We believe that we really need that society and that structure where we have a gender equal society that allows for women and men to flourish and both be at the table together, rather than women being at the table in a structure that is embedded and that is really for men. So that's it. We'd like to thank you all for the debate today, and we do believe there has been positive changes, no doubt, but there just hasn't been that transformational shift that we need, and we look at those agreements and declarations from Colombia and Beijing for what can be done for the future. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Charlotte. That now closes our debate. And just turning to our adjudicator, would you like we were happy to give you 5 or 10 minutes, Amy, to just gather your thoughts and notes before you, you present your feedback and nominate the best and runner-up speaker.
Jackie and both teams, all done. It's up to you. I can spend the next sort of 5 to 10 minutes thinking out loud and reflecting on sort of what both debating teams have delivered, and then let you know who I've nominated for best speaker and follow-up speaker, or I can go away and have a think about it.
What would you prefer?
I'm happy to talk out loud.
Go for it.
Oh, and now I can see my face. I want to congratulate both teams. This has been a really excellent debate. You've both drawn on really important research, including some of my favourite researchers, so bonus points there. What I'm going to do, because I haven't had the chance to sort of put this together in a coherent way as you have, I'm going to just quickly skim over the notes that I was taking as each of you we're talking. I'll try and sort of separate it out into two teams. For the government team, I think you made a really strong case overall for why women, peace and security is important. You talked really well about country level examples of where progress has been made. I do feel, though, that zeroing in on a definition of transformation meant that we kept talking about transformation across the rest of the debate. And I would really have liked to have heard both teams talk about practice at the international level. So I was wanting to hear from you about, has international practice changed? And I feel like we didn't quite land that conversation. But that's not to say that concepts of transformation aren't important, but I feel like it did suck a bit of the oxygen out of the discussion. I thought there were some particularly good points from the government side about the increase in the number of national action plans, which I think is a powerful indicator of the extent to which governments have taken on that agenda. But to my point about international practice, does that actually translate into international practice? So when we're talking about the number of women in national parliaments, is that the same thing as the Security Council taking this seriously, or is the Security Council not relevant? You made some really excellent points about the legitimacy of the Women, Peace and Security agenda and the impact that it has on lasting peace, which I think is really important. But possibly you're overselling the agenda when I think we're all here to support the agenda, but unpick the extent to which it had been transformational. On the opposition side, I'm going to just take it. We spent a lot of time talking about transformation, and what I wanted to hear from you is some of your assessment about whether it had impacted international practice. I think your focus on the large body of work still to do on sexual violence was actually really important. And the fact that we've seen so many resolutions with that focus and yet no real powerful mechanisms for compliance or reporting or accountability emerge out of that does say something about how seriously this agenda is being taken. And I think there is something in there that suggests that there is potential for the stream of resolutions or the package of resolutions around WPS that make up the agenda means that it's not being talked about elsewhere. In security practice and peacemaking practice, and you picked up on that when you talked about the number of women in peacekeeping operations and those sorts of things. I could see where you were trying to take your discussion on a victim-centred or essentialised approaches to women in peace. But for me, it didn't quite land. I could see what you were trying to do, and I think it's an important thing to unpack, but it didn't quite land. The opposition team does get a bonus point for being the only team to mention patriarchy, which I think is really important. So I think your essential point that there are a range of gendered and harmful gendered norms that constrain a range of aspects of women's life, and if the WPS agenda doesn't interact with those and that limits the effectiveness of that agenda is really important. You all actually presented really well. Some of you were a bit fast, but I think you know that. So possibly some feedback to take back next time is try and say less but more slowly. Maybe that constant rebuttal of what we mean by transformation was taking up quite a number of words. And I do want to agree with the government side that if the opposition was to propose an alternative structure or approach to WPS, putting that towards the front of the debate would have created more of an opportunity to unpack that. And as it was, the only bit of the debate that got cut off was the final piece that would have explained that. So I think you were a little bit disadvantaged by that. Now, Jackie, I need to seek your advice. I am happy to identify who I thought were the best and second best speakers, but do I also have to identify which side won?
No, we don't have a winner in our debate.
We don't have a winner. I love that.
Everybody wins.
Knowledge is the winner. Yeah. Okay. It was really hard. It was really hard to pick who was the best speaker, because you all you brought a lot of gravitas and personality to your presentations. But if you're forcing me to choose, I identified Malinthi Mawala, the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, as the best speaker. I think you did a really good job of rebutting the definition around what transformation means, but you spoke really clearly and convincingly. Your points are really well made, and I felt very brought along by what you were saying, so I want to congratulate you there. The second, and I'm going to pick two women because we've talked a lot about the representation of women, so let's just go for 100% in this instance. The second was Beheshta Ahmadi from the Deputy Prime Minister from the government side. Beheshta, I thought your rebuttal of the transformational point that we're talking about visible change and not a flip was a beautifully made point, and I think something that's really important for us to all hold on to. And I thought you spoke really clearly and articulately, so congratulations to you as well.
Thank you very much, Amy. Tough choice, and congratulations to Malintha and to Beheshta, and to all speakers really for another excellent debate. But thanks so much for those insights. And I was also personally quite surprised how much all of you kind of sort of honed in on the semantics of transformation. It's probably not what I would have focused on, but possibly I think, in approaching that question, we do need a methodology to understand how we're going to define and measure transformation. And I personally quite liked the thoughts. I think it was Zara mentioned that transformation is a process, but we do expect, as the opposition also pointed out, we do expect sort of tangible change along the way. So I think it's worth thinking about it. And I would just add to Amy just also that I probably would have liked you all to engage with the 4 pillars of the Women, Peace and Security agenda, which don't only relate to women's participation in peace processes or to addressing the impunity for sexual and gender-based violence, but also to women's security and rights in recovery from conflict, but also from natural disasters and terrorism and a whole range of other types of sort of international security threats and crises. And maybe just a couple things, just because being an expert in the field, there are 84 national action plans, there are 10 resolutions, just encourage you all to engage a bit more in thinking about the theory and practice of women, peace and security, which is probably wrongly named and is in fact a gender equality and peace agenda. And just to reiterate the final point of Charlotte Jones in the opposition side, who tried to pose an alternative model for women, peace and security. And she said a society and a structure where men and women are alongside one another building the peace. And I just would like to say that in fact the activists who pushed for this resolution, which has grown into a movement, probably the only UN security resolution that has become a movement, those activists were exactly hoping for that society and structure in which men and women would together build peace. So thank you very much. I found it super stimulating and took notes for all speakers. And I just congratulate you, for your collaboration and for your your excellent presentations today. With that, I close our proceedings and look forward to the next time that we all meet Monash and Afghans for Progressive Thinking. And please give a round of thanks to our wonderful adjudicator, Amy Haddad. And thank you to Ryan Attard and our Stephen from Monash University, who have made it possible for us to have this debate and to live stream, and also to Jackie Blaustein, who will be posting the recording on the Toward Inclusive Peace website. So thanks again to everyone, and enjoy your afternoon and evening, and look out for more Women, Peace and Security events in this 20th anniversary.